This is the Free Spirits of L&D podcast, where we talk about life as a freelancer in the fascinating world of learning and development, and ask our guests all the questions you wanted to know but were maybe too afraid to ask. Yes, we even talk about how we get business and what we all charge. At the end of each episode, each guest gets to set a bonus question for the next one. So whether you're thinking about taking the leap, brand new to freelancing, or an experienced freelancer, you won't want to miss this. Welcome back to the Free Spirits of L&D podcast. And today our guest is Jennifer Potter. She's a wonderful coach, consultant and facilitator and founder of Frankly. Welcome, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. And hello. I am equal parts excited and nervous about this.
It's probably worth letting our listeners know as well. We know each other, right? We've worked together. We go out for coffee together. Although weirdly, we've not known each other for long.
No. Maybe 18 months, 2 years?
Maybe 18 months, even though we live in the same city.
Village.
Same village, indeed. Yeah, we've been working in the same space for probably the last 20 plus years, but haven't really encountered each other until recently. But in that time, we have actually ended up working together, and we've worked on a few different projects together, and it's been really cool.
It has. It's been great fun. Great fun.
This has been one of those things I've had in the back of my mind. I actually must get Jennifer on the podcast and chat about her journey, because you've had a really interesting sort of squiggly journey into L&D freelancing. And maybe we should start with that story.
It is a good squiggly story, and it still doesn't make sense to me on some levels, and on other levels it does. So I started my proper career on a graduate scheme at Vodafone in the commercial arena, so doing marketing, business planning, strategy, and had one of those, became a manager really quickly, and then really quickly went, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Knocked on HR's door literally and was like, you need to send me on some training courses. I need to learn how to do this. So I went on quite a lot of training courses and would spend the whole time in these training courses going, oh, I don't want to be sat here. I want to be stood up there doing this to other people, for other people. And I saw what a difference it made for me, and it kind of it woke something up in me, it woke up the kind of natural helper, fixer, people pleaser from childhood that liked to help people, kind of was like, oh, I could do this for a living. So that was the kind of wake up moment, I guess. And then tried for 7 years to get over into L&D and just repeatedly got a no thank you, and everywhere I worked I would say, let me have the team stuff, let me have the culture stuff, let me have the people stuff, I'll lead all that for this department. So I was kind of honing my craft a bit more in the battlefield, I suppose. And then I had burnout in a role. One of the roles I had, the consultancy role, I had this kind of weird inflammation in all my joints and couldn't move for quite a few days. So it was like my body literally went, if you are not going to heed the warnings I am giving you, we are shutting you down. And doctors were a bit baffled. So I ended up in acupuncture, which I'd never tried before. And it literally, to say it changed my life is an understatement. And then I started going, oh, this is magic. How does it work? Because you do, don't you, when you learning? You get curious about bloody everything. So I got really curious about acupuncture, and I signed up to do my second degree, which was Chinese medicine and acupuncture. So there's the first squiggle off-piste.
That's a big squiggle.
Isn't it? And it was weird because I remember being in the first year of this degree on my weekends, because I was working full-time still. It was a really interesting first year. And I did nearly bail a few times in the first year because I thought, I'm not sure if this is for me. But I stuck at it. And actually, when we got into the second year, it came alive a bit more for me.
And not wanting to psychologize this too much, it's interesting to me that both of those little squiggles were catalyzed by you experiencing something and then you wanting to share that with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I am definitely one of those that's like, oh my God, I've learned this amazing thing and it's really interesting. Can I tell you about it? I'm definitely that person. I think life can be really hard, and when you find things that makes life easier or helps you live life in a bit more of a meaningful way, why wouldn't you share that? And I guess that definitely, that desire to help people is at the heart of it all, I guess. If I can help someone, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
So
we've gone from kind of consulting and burnout to acupuncture. Where did Frankly come along in that story?
Well, Frankly came a lot later because acupuncture was kind of my way of getting out of corporate, I suppose. I'd had an itch. I don't know, maybe the last 5 years I was at Vodafone because I felt like I couldn't move into an L&D role, and I didn't want to go and do another commercial or internal comms culture role in another business to then try again to get into L&D. So I sort of thought, oh, I'll have to like leave that dream. And I'd done my coach training, or I'd started my coach journey as a manager. So my introduction to coaching was coaching for leaders. And then I went and did more training of my own. So I had this kind of thing that I had this exit strategy that I could put acupuncture and coaching together, and that would be a really good fit for me, you know, coach the mind and heal the body with the needles. So that enabled me to put myself forward for voluntary redundancy, which came up quite quickly, which was a bit of a shock. I left work, but still had a year on my 4-year degree to go, and also relocated from the south back home to Yorkshire in the midst of all that. So there was a lot of change. And to begin with, I was sort of running 2 businesses. Once I'd graduated, I sort of had an acupuncture business. And then kind of like old friends from within the business community were like, can you come and do this? Can you come and do a team day? Can you come and do some coaching? Can you do some consultancy? So, you know, you've got to pay the bills. So I was like, okay. And I tried to run both businesses side by side for a little while, and then realised that was like really hard. Like, I'd never run a business before of my own. I thought it was going to be super easy. It was definitely not super easy. There's a lot to learn. And the money was coming in for the kind of coaching consultancy work with business clients. So I parked the acupuncture in terms of a traditional practice. So I would say the philosophy of traditional Chinese medicine and 5-element wisdom in particular, that it weaves through all of my work. So it's with my work with corporates, whether they know it or not. So I originally I just kind of had one of those, I need a name so I can register on Companies House, simply JP. It's only temporary, I said at the time. I think 7-8 years later, it was still simply JP. Yeah. So there was a kind of period of being really on my own, self-employed, trying to build something, wondering, still have that question about what do I want to do when I grow up, and is this the thing? And I moved towards doing associate work. So I went through a phase where I genuinely felt really lonely. I really love being part of a team, and I really started to notice how much I was missing that, like being in it with others. And so I moved towards, I found a company nearby that felt like they were a really good fit for my values. They were a bit kind of like on the edge. They're a bit different to other associate businesses, which appealed to me because I'm a bit of a rebel. And I found a community of peers, and it was the peers that I was missing. It was that kind of being with people facing similar challenges, sharing ideas, sharing learning, sharing books and courses. More people like to share exciting things that they found. And I sort of like, my plan would be to keep my own stuff and have that on the side, but I very quickly became kind of all consumed by the associate company and found it tricky to do both and. So I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And then COVID hit, and Frankly was born in COVID. So I had that kind of like, I don't think I'm going to reach my full potential if I stay in this peer community and don't do my own thing. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to do my own thing really well and that really well. It would have to be one or the other. So yeah, I did a lot of thinking in COVID and lockdown. And I'd been on a Do Lectures program, which had been really helpful, called the Keyboard CEO. And I'd sort of spent a lot of time kind of reflecting on the questions from that course. And that's where Frankly was born. What's that, 4 or 5 years? 2020?
What's intrigued me about some of the story that you just shared there is that word loneliness. And I don't think enough people talk about that experience of loneliness as a freelancer.
I think it's really huge, and I think there's always a tension. Certainly for me, there's always been this tension between like, do I build something a bit bigger and go down having employees? I have a really small team of associates at the minute, and that on purpose. It suits me to keep us at a certain size. But that kind of circles round. I think about getting a job as well. That circles round for me, and I think it's the belonging. It's the need to belong that drives it more than anything else. which links to loneliness. And I think linked to that, I was just thinking there, like when you were talking about corporate, I was like, oh, I miss the IT help desk at Vodafone. When something went wrong, you just go, can someone help?
Yeah.
And those connections over the coffee machine and the like, shall we just go and have a walk and chat about this problem we've got? Like all that stuff. I really miss that. So I think you have to learn to resource yourself differently. But the other thing I found, which really sort of wasn't ready for, was the when I worked at Vodafone, I could pick up the phone to a potential client, supplier, someone, and I'd go, it's Jennifer from Vodafone. And they wouldn't really hear Jennifer. They would hear, oh my God, Vodafone's ringing, and it was like, oh, this big brand is ringing us. And it kind of opened doors effortlessly. We were growing and quite successful at the time I was there. Yeah. And then kind of like being like, hello, it's Jennifer from Simply JP. Who?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like I've really got to stand on my own 2 feet and like really know my worth and be really confident and competent about that outbound call or a networking connection. And I wasn't prepared for that. I found that really hard to begin with.
What steps have you taken to ward off that loneliness?
Well, make good friends with people like you. Yeah, I think it's building your network around you. Funny story, when I first went self-employed, I thought I'll throw myself into networking, and I was naively expecting to meet loads of like Alan Sugars and Dragon's Den kind of people. And typically I was met with a room full of lonely self-employed people looking for connection. And I was like, oh, this isn't, and I guess, those Dragon's Den kind of leaders, they're too busy in their businesses to be doing all that networking. And actually I did join one network really early on, and they had the peer group concept, which I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of learning circles. And that was really helpful. Like people at a similar phase, startup phase, asking the same questions. So that was definitely one thing. But the networking I quickly learned was not for me. That my clients I wanted to work with weren't going there anyway. But I didn't want to spend all my time networking. I wanted to spend my time doing the work and being with clients. Or doing more learning for me, because I love learning and I'm a bit addicted to it. So then it was kind of like, how do I create my own support network then? So I'm a big fan of supervision. That resources me really well. And I have it more regularly than I probably need to, because it's such a sense of support for me. And then leaning on people that are your kind of people, and then having that good network of people that you can just ring up and go, have you ever faced this before? Because this is a new one on me.
Yeah. And this is exactly why Free Spirits was set up. It's a community for people who are freelancing in the L&D space, where you can have that conversation of, oh my God, I've just got this weird email from a client. What on earth does this mean? Or what does that qualification or that process look like? Has anyone got any contract templates that would work for this kind of project? And I'm with you. I think one of the big benefits of going freelance is overcoming that initial, the terrifying nature of being lonely in that space, and realizing that actually, yeah, you can just create your own team, and it can be people that you kind of handpick, as opposed to a bunch of people that you may have just been thrown in a room together with and you end up spending the next 10 years with, regardless of whether you like them or not. That's a really huge luxury, I think, to have.
Yeah. It's a different kind of team, but I think it takes a bit more effort from you. I notice I have to put a bit more effort into, I can't just, swan by the coffee machine and go, oh, it's Abby. Hi, let's talk about whatever. I have to consciously go, right, oh, am I okay? Do I need anything? How are those other people doing? People that might have been having a hard time. I need to check in on them and just see if they need anything. One of the benefits of not being employed is there's a lot less politics to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's very, very freeing.
Yeah, politics and power dynamics just evaporate. I hadn't realised how much I was kind of playing a lot of those games until stepping away from it. I go, actually, everyone I work with now is a peer, and we're equals. There's something it's quite difficult to get to when you're in the corporate space. Yeah,
you've got to find a way of navigating the game, unless they're a really, really well-developed culture. And I think that those kind of companies are rare to find. I think the place where I meet it is in my client systems. So you meet their power games, you meet their politics, you meet their hierarchical structures. And it's always kind of like, a bit of that for me. Yeah, I'm really glad that's your problem. And I'm really glad I'm over here out of it, looking in. and hopefully making a bit of a difference for them as well.
I guess the equivalent of meeting at the coffee machine now is meeting at the coffee shop, which you and I do relatively often, for a little natter and putting the world to rights. And one of the things we talked about on one of our recent meetings was the notion of pivoting a business. Because I know you've pivoted almost like ballerina style. There's been lots of pivoting going on.
I was a ballerina as a child. I'd just like to say that. I did do ballet. So yeah, and like it's been a bit of a kind of journey of experimenting for me. Like, I know I love, like, coaching has been my kind of consistent, like, I know I love coaching. That's like my bread and butter. It's the work I find the most rewarding and the least amount of effort in the moment. You know, and there's obviously a lot of effort goes into being able to be in that space in the session because there's all the training and supervision that goes behind it. So that kind of was like, I know I really love coaching. And then all the other stuff has been like, well, maybe I'll run retreats, or, maybe I started another business called Brave Souls with a friend at one point. And we did that for 2 years, again, alongside Simply JP. And it was a bit of an experiment. And we were trying to run retreats and we wanted to do more meaningful personal development. And then we kind of reached a point where my friend wanted to go off down more of a spiritual path and I was still in the kind of personal and professional space, like development space. So we kind of put it to bed consciously and went our own ways. And then the kind of pivot to associate work. So it's kind of like, it feels like for me, it's been a bit more of a like, I know I want to be in this realm. I know these are the ingredients that matter to me. Let's go see if this is a good fit for me. And then kind of going, it was for a while, but not anymore. And then, frankly, it's 4 or 5 years. And frankly, it's an interesting one because I've had 2 of the best years I've ever had self-employed with it, and 2 of the most challenging years I've ever had since I've been self-employed. So it's like a story of both halves at the moment, or a story of 2 halves.
What is this year, out of interest?
What is this? This year is in the hard year. It's one of the hard 2, yeah. It's been a tough one. Yeah, politics and the world stage have not helped, definitely. Yeah. And there's always that question for me about like, oh, right, okay, then, is this still the right thing? Shall I pivot again? And, when we met recently and I was going, I just don't think I've got it in me to pivot again. Like, it feels like on some ways, and I think you've got to stay awake to it. You've got to be constantly open to pivoting because the market is changing faster than it's ever changed before. I think you've got to stay awake to. It's the kind of ikigai thing, I suppose. What's the work I love? What do businesses need? What are they willing to invest in? And it's the willing to invest in thing that's gone really up and down for me in the last 2 years because I've been working with smaller and medium-sized businesses that are affected really heavily by budget changes and political changes. Leaving the EU affected a lot of clients for me. I had a client was liquidated post all of that. And that has an impact on people like us as suppliers.
Yeah,
I think you've got to stay awake to pivoting, but I'm definitely at a place where I'm like, oh God, have I got the energy to do it again?
Do you think we could just stay in that and just like explore, what does that look like? So taking us from the moment of, I don't think this is working anymore, to, I'm quite curious and I'd like to try and experiment with something, to I'm going to switch my focus to something and see how it goes. Can you just walk us through an example of that for you? How did that process go for you?
Well, I would say I'm definitely in the middle of an anatomy of a pivot at the moment, like a pivot inquiry maybe, because there's a constant reflection for me about, there was a really good friend of mine, sales background, left Vodafone in the same redundancy round I did, and set himself up as a coach and a team coach and never done any marketing. And he's done really well. Like the last 2 years, his business has really taken off. And we kind of like get together every once, twice a year and just check in. How's it going? And, he's part of my support network and definitely been a cheerleader when I've needed it in the years. And his thing has always been, one of the things I observe about you, Jennifer, is that you pivot a lot. And so for other people trying to recommend and refer you in, it's hard, and you do so many things. So it's hard for your clients and other people to know what to recommend you in for or to share you into another. So I remember going through a phase of going, oh God, a mini pivot maybe, like a refinement pivot. I was like, right, I need to really focus. And he literally just went out into the world saying, I coach and I do team coaching at a board level and that is it. And once you're in, he's like, I get asked to do all sorts of stuff once I'm in and I've built a relationship, but they're the things I've become known for. They're the things that open me the door. And I was sort of thinking, oh, he's got a sales background. He's very savvy in these things. I should learn from this. And actually what I realized is that wasn't authentic to me. Like I am quite a creative spirit. Frankly, was my way of doing that in some ways, because what I did was I really narrowed the point of frankly. Like, what is the point of frankly? The point of frankly is literally here to wake leaders up, help them unlock potential in others, and hopefully change the world a little bit. And I was like, and everything that we do off the back of that is that. So it's really about supporting leaders to be the best they can be. And if I can be known for that, then that's my one thing, and I can hang lots of different, executions off the back of it. So that's an example of like somebody else's perception of what's worked for them, and then you going, oh my God, I need to kind of put that coat on and see how that fits for me.
Yeah.
And then maybe like the current pivot, I think, is midlife. I'm perimenopausal phase, which is throwing up a whole heap of like life stage questions. And there's that kind of like, oh, right, I've just started thinking, I've got 15 years to 20 maybe, depending on what the government do and how I feel of working. What do I want to spend it doing? And I'm quite tired at the minute because of menopause. Thank you, menopause. And because the end of work life, and it's 20 years feels like a long way still for me, but it's kind of put it a bit nearer than maybe not thinking about it. And it's kind of made me go, oh, have I got another career in me? And have I, if I get to that point and I look back, well, I go, oh, I wish I'd gone and done X, or I wish I'd done more Y. Yeah. And I really do feel like this freelance life, the free part of the freelance life, having that freedom is such a gift to us. But you can easily, like I was saying to someone just this week, my acupuncturist, how I left corporate life to get off the corporate treadmill. And although I'm freelance, self-employed, I'm still on the corporate, I'm still outside the corporate treadmill, trying to sell into the corporate treadmill in many ways, because my clients are businesses. And so I feel like I've really escaped in a way I thought I would when I left. So that's a question that's been with me quite a lot recently.
Yeah. When you were talking about it, it kind of struck me that a lot of people would view that process of pivoting as potentially quite a binary thing. So you've either got a push or a pull in this case. So my business isn't going very well, therefore I'm pushed, I'm desperate, I must do something different in order to make money and pay the mortgage, etc. And then sometimes it's a pull of kind of like a personal thing of, I want to try something, experiment with something different, and I'm curious about, well, maybe this is a new career for me, or maybe this is something I've always really fancied testing out. It doesn't really matter which of those categories you fall into. You have the choice to do it or not do it.
Yeah. And definitely not binary, like yes and everything in between.
Yeah.
Because a pivot can be just I don't know, let's imagine I go, I'm done with team coaching. It's too hard at the moment. This is part of my life. So a pivot might be like, I'm going to just stop offering team coaching and I'm just going to focus on my other two offerings for now. That can be a pivot. It's like a mini pivot. Or I refine my target audience. So I maybe, another mini pivot might be, I'm going to focus on selling into public sector, third sector charities, where I can feel like maybe my leadership skills could be put to better use, and I'll not do the commercial market so much anymore. That's another kind of mini pivot. Or, one of the ones for me is that kind of, I have a little tug towards doing more therapeutic work. So the kind of tug towards psychotherapy training and really integrating all the constellation training that I've done but into more of a therapeutic space rather than in the business space. So that's like another kind of like itch I might need to scratch at some point.
But where have you landed at the moment then, in terms of, because the way you were describing your business and all the different things that it could offer versus the kind of golden thread around helping leaders be the best they can be? Yeah.
So I have a kind of like priority. So coaching is like my golden egg. I love it. It sits in my sweet spot. I'm in flow. I get a lot from that work. I learn a lot from that work. And I feel like it really does make a difference. Well, I know it makes a difference because I've had so much coaching myself, and you see the difference in your clients. So coaching is kind of like my golden egg. It's like focus on getting coaching, having a good volume of coaching clients. But I'm also careful not to have too many, because I think there's an optimum number of coaching clients that you should work with at any one point. And then for me, it's leader development intervention, what I call leader development intervention. So that could be anything from a 2-day coaching for leaders skills program with some action learning sets to back it up, or a 12-month bespoke leader development program for an organization that's really thinking about driving growth, but driving it through a shift in the leadership culture. So that would be my second tier. And then third, team coaching. And I love team coaching because it takes me to my edge often. I do weirdly like that, not knowing what you're going to get when you're in the room together and having to really think on your feet and resource yourself well for it. But it takes a lot of energy, like compared to the other work, it takes a lot of energy. So I guess there's a question for me around that just phase of life as well at the moment with all the menopause, having to navigate the menopause thing. And, you do kind of go, oh, like if I could make a choice, it would be in that order. I wouldn't say no to working with a team that was ready to do the work. Definitely not. But I would do some really careful contracting around it. So that would be my kind of, priority order.
Cool.
But I'm not also I would say like I'm always open to, Jane, do you fancy collaborating on this? And I'm a bit of a like, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. And if it aligns enough with vision and mission purpose, then I'm kind of like, yeah, if it ticks enough boxes. So I'd never say, don't, like for me, I'm too creative to pin things down and keep life really simple. It would bore the shit out of me.
I can really resonate with that one, that thing of, because it's really lovely that people ask.
Yeah.
And also, sometimes genuine, you're just curious, what would it be like to work on this and collaborate with this person on this project that might have never come along and might never come along again?
And what can I learn? I was on a 3-day map reading navigation course at the weekend, and it was really interesting learning from another teacher, but in a really different field, and it reminded me of, I think it's a Socrates quote where, that the wisest person in a room is the person that believes they know the least. And I was like, oh, God, I'd forgotten about it. I'm sure I've heard that before. And I was like, what a good quote, because it's, like, especially in our line of work, because we're that like consultant, you're brought in as an expert in your field in some respects as that consultant, but you're also trying to empower and enable them to do the deciding, the decision making, the choices, the changes. It's the responsibility is definitely with them. And I definitely, every piece of work, every client I have, I always learn something. And that's just because I'm open to learning. It's as simple as that. So I think, keeping your humility matters. I don't know why I've gone off on that tangent, but... Yeah,
we're never quite finished, are we?
No. And how great. Like, I love that. Not least because coming from corporate, and this was definitely something I had to unpack. And definitely of that, you go to school, you get your GCSEs, and then you're supposed to go at your A-levels, and then you get your A-levels so you can go to university if you want to, and then you go off university and you get a proper job, and then you find out what the next level is, and the next, it's like being in a computer game, and got into Vodafone, and it was like the F band was the holy grail, and so you put your head down and your head for, and it's like there's this kind of like trajectory of tick points to say that you're doing okay in life, and then you go self-employed and you're like, oh shit, what are the tick points? Like, how do I know I'm doing okay? How do I measure up? Who do I compare myself to? And I think I've had some dark times in my freelance life where I've done that. Comparisonitis is a killer of creativity, and I think it definitely is in freelance. Well, like I said about my friend, the sales friend from Vodafone days, I compared myself to him, and I'm like, oh, he's doing really well, and maybe I should follow more of his approach. And actually, if I've learned anything, it's like stay in your own lane, and just the more, and it really does matter to me to be authentic and honest. And I think the more authentic you can be, and honesty is part of mine, like showing up and being real and being vulnerable, like just find your lane, find your way of doing things, and don't let anyone else pull you off it, And also I have a working inquiry that I travel with constantly, which is what does a good day look like now, and how that is changing so fast at the minute for me. So I keep an eye on that. What does a good life look like for me for now?
Yeah, that's a lovely share. Thank you. And it's probably a really timely one as well, because I think we're recording this in mid-November, and we're getting into that time of year where people are starting to get a bit more reflective about the year that's just gone, starting to think ahead about the year that will be to come. And one of the things that I changed this year, and it's really had a massive impact, is rather than setting kind of aspirations, goals based on things that, in all honesty, were not in my control, things like sales and turnover and profitability and you know, how many clients I've worked with or what have you. I set it based on learning, which was entirely in my control. So I set myself a goal of things that I really wanted to try and learn this year. And some of them were about myself, but other things were just genuinely kind of courses or books that I wanted to read, or, you know, theories that I wanted to get more familiar with. And I've pretty much done all of them, and it feels great.
That's brilliant.
For me, that's the level up. That's the computer game.
Yeah.
I've done I've actually, you know, taken on some of those books behind me. They're my big boss battles. I've noticed that in these conversations with freelancers, a real golden thread is the ability and desire to make connections between seemingly unconnected things.
Yeah.
So like going on a map reading course, for example, and, you know, being super familiar with kind of Chinese medicine. I can totally see how that would start to filter through into, you know, your coaching practice or leadership development practice. The marketer in me is already thinking about navigating leadership and what that would look like. Because that's a really fun thing, again, that you don't normally get to do and experiment with when you're in the corporate world.
Absolutely, yeah. Or you have to take holiday and pay out of your own money. Or you know, I can do that now. But yeah, going on a training course, it's got to be, well, how's it going to contribute towards your job? And there's a bit more of a linear decision in that, isn't there? As opposed to, I feel like it's a really lovely benefit of being free, actually, provided the money is showing up and the business is doing okay so that you can pay for it. I love that. Like, the one thing I hold from my acupuncture training was that, and maybe more because, you know, I'm obviously really passionate about climate change and do quite a lot of work and volunteering over in that space, and try and bring that into my clients to inspire them to do more. And there's that thing in acupuncture, which is like if the body was a metaphor for the planet, it wants to be in healthy balance. It wants to be in a healthy balance between give and receive, you know, active and rest. So yeah, you're right. It doesn't, it gives you like that, you know, need for me to not be bored, I guess. And that I love learning those different metaphors and different lenses to look at things through.
And that is a wonderful segue into Kelly's question from our last episode. And Kelly and I were chatting about wearing multiple hats. And she asked a question, which is, how do you stay centered into your why?
Great question.
What's your thoughts on that one?
Well, my first thought was there's two whys, because there's my personal why as Jennifer Potter, and then there's the why of Frankly. Like, the business has its own why. And I've already said about like the vision of Frankly is to help leaders wake up so that they can unlock potential and hopefully change the world a little bit. So that really helps me in a business context. And particularly, like, if I will come back to the personal thing, but on a company level thing, one of the things I found really challenging is that another pivot that I did. Another pivot that I did was that I had this existential crisis about the planet about 7-8 years ago, and I had someone who was like, that's it, like, I'm like radically changed their life from the work they do, the travel, where they live, how they live. Like, literally was like my number one priority now is planet. I'm not making any decision without it. And I remember at the time, like, even 8 years ago, I was thinking, wow, that's bold. That's really bold. And it really got me thinking about my work, and I was like, where can I be in service of the planet better? Like, what work could I do that I've got the gifts already that I could do? And I was like, well, there's definitely an opportunity in that kind of leader development space to get leaders really thinking and connecting more the dots to, you know, planet, sustainable, regenerative leadership. What does the future of leadership need now? And I did quite a pivot around that and started putting out, like, my sales and marketing was largely in that kind of planet-friendly leadership space, and actually found there wasn't a big market for it, sadly, at the time. So I had to kind of rethink that, because that was a bit of a like, oh, but that's so central to my why, you know. And actually the the transition for me was in the contracting. So I would say you as a client don't need to be net zero or carbon neutral or even a B Corp or any of those things. But you need to be okay that I and my team of associates will be talking about planet friendly leadership, and we're not going to apologize for that. So as long as you're okay with that, it frees us up to kind of do that. And most clients I find go, oh my God, we need to be doing more. We're just not getting round to it.
Yeah.
So that really helped me in a work context. So I think staying tuned into the kind of vision of the business, but also the values, they definitely help, which links me to mine. It's a really great question because centre makes me feel like stoic and still. And I think we're a bit more like a weeble. I think we sort of like, it's a bit more of a weeble, like how do we come back to, but we get like pulled or pushed or hooked or, so coming back to it. And I think for me, it's my values, definitely my personal values, which I've recently done some work on, and I've worked with values for years, even before I left corporate life. And they've been such a kind of North Star in my life. And freedom and fairness have always been my biggest two values. So I'm a real fighter for justice and fairness and more kindness in the world. But freedom really matters to me. Like I need to be free. Like I absolutely couldn't survive if I wasn't free. That's how important it is. So when I'm thinking, shall I pivot? Shall I get a job? Or it's really hard. Or, oh my God, my sales have dipped this year. All those kind of things. I come back to, yeah, you could get a job. Absolutely. You're definitely still employable. And let's just tot it up against your values. How will that affect your freedom? How will it affect fairness, courage, joy? All those kind of things. So my values, I think, are definitely what keep me centered and keep me back on my path when I weeble or wobble.
Lovely answer. Thanks, Jennifer. Thank you for sharing all of that. Is there a question that you would like to set for our next guest?
Yes. I know you asked me this and I was like, oh, what a good idea. And so that I've been training in the last 3 years to do my systemic constellation practice. And I've absolutely loved it. It's a tool I've been playing with and been on the recipient of for about 10 years. So to finally get around to doing the training has been amazing. One of the concepts that is really powerful from systemic constellation work is this concept of how you resource yourself. And it's about the cost and gain of choices and staying in a, whatever you're exploring, actually, whether it's challenging or easy or everything in between, like how do you first find yourself in a really grounded, resourced way? And some of the philosophy in systemic is about knowing that you're resourced by everyone that's gone before you as well. Like, so I'm doing this, like I've got peacock tails behind me and behind me is everyone who's touched my life, from my family tree to the teachers, to the friends, to the inspiring people, to my heroes like Brené Brown, like how, and knowing that all that never goes away. It's there behind you, resourcing you, so you can lean into it. And I really like this thing of like, lean back, because it does the the Brené Brown thing of have a strong spine and a soft heart. So that kind of like lean back into your resources. So yes. So my question is, how do you resource yourself well?
Lovely. Thank you for that. Do you want to have a crack at it for yourself? How do you resource yourself well?
I just answered it. The systemic work really does help resource me at the moment. So my supervisor who I've worked with for 4 years, she's systemic trained. So that's one way I resource myself well, with supervision. I also go and attend a lot of systemic workshops as a participant to learn, but really to explore what's going on in my world and where there might be entanglements and things, blocks and barriers that maybe don't belong to me, but could be returned to sender. So I do a lot of that. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of getting out in nature. And that's become really important as I've got older. And well-being things like meditation, I'm a bit hit and miss with, but meditation does really work for me when I do it. And I commit to kind of like regular things. So I although I could self-administer acupuncture, I go to someone and have it. And I have it on a regular basis. I think there's something really important in that in the exchange as well, again, about giving and receiving, to be able to just go and receive someone looking after you and receive someone helping you, not feeling like you've got to do it all on your own. And getting better at my boundaries. So I'm learning to say no more, and I'm learning to put me first, even if it means it might upset others or a group of others. To opt out of things if I don't feel I've got the resources, whatever the resources might be. That's been quite a tricky journey, especially recently. But it's resourced me well. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I will make sure we save that for our next guest. We don't know who it will be yet, actually. So we could tune in to see how they take on that question from you.
With people like you, that resources me.
Oh, me too. I was going to say the same thing, because that's it. I think a lot of people actually see me as relatively introverted, and I probably behave relatively introverted, but I think at heart I'm probably somewhere in the middle there. And when I'm struggling, that's generally what tops me up. A good conversation over whilst holding something
warm, that tastes like
wet and warm and caffeinated does wonders for the soul, I think.
Connection. Connection where we started.
Yeah, connection, communities. It makes all the difference. I'm going to ask you the question that we ask everybody on the podcast, and that is, Jennifer, what do you charge?
I've been dreading this question. It's such a funny thing how funny we feel about money, isn't it?
I know.
And I know I'm not allowed to say it depends.
I've got it depends. It's going to the bell's ready to ring. If you did, you're welcome to.
So coaching's easy. So I have two price points. So I say to clients, I tend to work with kind of exec level or SLT level. So it's £500 an hour for exec and £350 an hour level under. Obviously I have associates as well that do some of that work. And I also say to clients, don't let money be a barrier. If you look at this and you're like, oh, it's out of my budget, don't think we can't do something together. We'll just try and cut it a different way.
Yeah.
And I typically sell my coaching in blocks of 12 hours, where that works for the client. So that's coaching. And then the other work, it really does depend, because it depends on if there's two facilitators, if there's a lot of design involved. So I typically think in my head, if it's a team process or if it's a leader development process, I will typically think for every day of delivery, we're looking at 3 days of work. And my day rate, depending on what industry they're in and what they can afford, ranges from £1,000 a day to £1,500 a day. Project management, sometimes I charge a bit less for if I know their budget is tight. I usually put, depending on like the size of the project, there'll be some project management days in as well that I put some fees around. Yeah. Is that enough?
It is, but more than enough. Thank you for being so generous with that. You got it out of the way. It's done.
Out of the way.
It is fascinating though, because I think, again, back to pivoting, I think there's a whole conversation about pivoting around price as well. Like I remember when I used to run an organization that would contract in consultants, there was a big piece of work that came up once for a large TV channel. And in order to fulfill it, we needed to get like 30 facilitators in a room. So we had basically called everyone we knew and said, like, can you do this? Are you free? What do you charge? And we got this enormous spectrum of prices that came back, all the way from like a couple of £100 for a full day to £5,000 somebody wanted for a full day's worth of facilitation. And some people were really prepared to bend on that in order to have the experience and fulfill the work. And other people were just like, no, just don't get out of bed for less than X amount. And you can take it or leave it. And I was really intrigued by that approach of being mindful and flexible enough to know when it's appropriate to pivot on price. I also know that the people's acceptance of certain prices changes as well. Yeah. That the market just can't absorb it sometimes, whereas other times it's totally fine to charge more.
When you meet a client and you know they really want the work, they'll really show up for the work, they're ready for the change, but they just don't have the budget. And then, you know, I think there's a whole load of stuff. I mean, like the benchmarking of your price is really important based on what you're doing selling into, because you don't want them to think, oh, she's cheap, like she must be rubbish, because people do have that crazy perception sometimes with money. For me as well, I'm quite anti-capitalist, so I'm sort of like wanting to be somewhere like I want to be able to reach clients who need the affordable, and that really matters to me. But I also want to have a good life, and I want to be able to pay the bills and not have to, struggle. The benefit of freedom is we should be able to pay our own bills, but it's not always easy to do that. So I think you have to get good as well at, I've said yes to some work because I've, been at times when I thought I really could just do with the money, and I've known it was going to be a pain in the arse piece of work. And then you think, you always end up at the end going, it wasn't worth it. Even if it's at your price, like your market price, your best price, what you think you're like worth in the market is, even if it's at that price, but it's going to be a pain in the arse. Like, you never say yes to a piece of pain in the arse work when there's scarcity. Hold on for something else. And it's really hard. I still find it really hard to do that. And I'm 13 years in. I still find it hard because it is, you want to pay the bills and be able to go for coffee.
Yeah, it's not cheap, this coffee. Wow, what a conversation we've had. I've been writing down a series of P's as we've been talking. We've covered a lot of P's today. I mean, obviously there's been pivoting. Proper. Pins and your acupuncture. Prices, pains in the arse, I've just written down just there. And a lot about the personal. So thank you for sharing so much about your story and your personal take on things. I really appreciated it. If anyone's listening to this and they're thinking, I really want to get to know Jennifer a bit more, I'd love to know a bit more about what she's up to and what she's doing, where can they find you?
Yeah, the best place is LinkedIn, I think, at the moment. So I think I'm Potter Jennifer on LinkedIn, but usually if you put Jennifer Potter Frankly in, it'll find me. And I'm running, actually, in January 2026, I'm going to run a constellation session. I'm really excited about it because I've been wanting to do that for a while. So that's another way of coming and connecting if people are interested in that.
Super duper. Thanks for letting us know. Jennifer, thank you so much again for joining us on the podcast today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, let us know by leaving a review on your favourite podcast app. It really makes a difference. And if you want to learn more about how L&D Free Spirits can lift up your freelancing business, you can find out more information at ldfreespirits.com.